Welcome to the Open Channel podcast, where we invite conscious conversation into the embodiment of unity and higher states of conscious awareness. I'm Shaunna Green.
And I'm Avalina Maline. Welcome to this co-created space for people who want to connect and remember their core essence. We are so grateful to have you with us. Yes.
Yeah.
Hello. Welcome,
Hello.
everyone.
Welcome.
So it's really fun, it's really heartwarming for me to connect with the two of you and just see where we want to go. It's not like there's a theme to follow, but it's like the journey of our shared energy.
Just to connect and see what needs to be said.
Yeah, there's so much happening right now. It's so it's real, and yet it feels surreal at the same time.
Yes.
There's so much flooding in these waves upon waves and waves of all this, light coming in, and of all this plasma light. And it's, as we're transforming and transitioning in these like human suits, integrating more and more, to me, it feels like, we're perceiving it as time speeding up. When in fact we know there's no time, but it's that there's just such a massive influx of all this, vibration that's carrying all this information and it's just showering and bombarding us with so much opportunity. And it's like whatever, we're choosing is going to reflect, how we integrate it and how we transcend it, because it's the whole, micro of us doing it, and and Gaia, the macro of her transcending itself as well. And it's just so palpable and pronounced right now, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. I feel like it's just like the game is on, and then going back to the basics for me, what I've been doing, because all the things that we've learned, all the tools that we've been doing for, our whole journeys, it's like, we were preparing for this. We were preparing for now. So just going back to the basics and letting that carry us, through these times, really. And for me, it's just been like the word sovereignty has just been like really dropping in, because we hear it all the time. And we know it, we understand it intellectually, but I feel like it has such a significant architecture to, this ascension cycle. So, that to me has been like really a key.
Well, let's talk about that. So what does sovereignty actually mean for you?
Yeah. To me, it feels like complete freedom and owning your knowingness of who you are, and allowing that to be your guidance. Nothing outside, because there's nothing outside of you, and it's all that's just remaining centeredness and owning everything that's happening, and allowing that just to happen with neutrality. And that's like where the magic happens to me.
So is that something to do with who you are in yourself, or is it more to do with what you're allowed to be in the world around you?
Yeah, probably both, I feel.
Well, and I wonder how we're feeling sovereignty as part of collectives, because there are, you were saying, Avalina, the micro of the macro, our journey with sovereignty is also related to the collective. And so what is our relationship with collectives? Maybe it's our genetic birth, earth family collective. Maybe it's our soul family collective. What's our relationship with sovereignty and collectives?
And even bigger than that, who are you? We have identified ourselves so much, and we tend to restrict ourselves to one identity, the human identity. So it's me versus the collective, the individual versus the collective. But then when you talk about the micro within the macro, it's like, who am I really? Maybe I am the collective. Maybe I am the Gaia. Maybe I am the cosmos. Maybe I'm all of universal consciousness that's fractally entering into this form and pretending to be human.
Exactly.
So all of that is
Or
sovereignty.
all of it. What is our, exactly.
Yeah,
Can
there's
we
so
be
many
all of
perspectives of identifying.
Yeah. And I think once we can feel like an easy flow of connectedness between these different identities, to me that would be sovereignty. There's something called political sovereignty, which has to do with maritime law and making your claim to be sovereign as a human, as a free man and woman, which is also important, and that's a movement that's gaining ground. But I think even more than that, can I be anywhere on earth under whatever conditions I'm facing and still be sovereign within myself? Because my sense of myself is not limited, restricted, and victimized.
Exactly. Can we energetically own the flow of that through whatever we meet, no matter what individual or collective view we happen to be looking at?
Yeah. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how sovereign would you place yourself at this time?
That's a tough one.
Can we be all? Can we be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 all at the same time?
I love that. Yeah, it definitely fluctuates. But overall, I'm feeling, lately I've been feeling very, very sovereign, very empowered, and very in touch with myself. And I'm so grateful for it. I'm so grateful for the path that I've chosen and the path that I've taken and the work I've done, because there was a long time where I wasn't feeling that way and I was doing lots of work and on the journey, and it was, it gets tiring. You're like, where's the joy? Like, when is this going to pay off? And now it's just like, wow, it's like, thank you. I'm so grateful for, the efforting, the work that you put in, the the awareness, the tools of being present, and whatever tools that everyone has under their belt. It's so worth it. And there's so much more to come, as we know, it just keeps evolving. So yeah, I'm feeling very excited and optimistic about what's happening. Yeah.
So what's the ingredients of sovereignty?
To me, there's a sense of choice. There is that's where sovereignty starts. That there is the recognition in ourselves that we have a choice about what is moving through us, and maybe that's as simple as a choice of how to feel or see, or a perspective we're choosing in a given moment, but that it has to start internally with the recognition of our sense of agency.
So choice versus feeling victimized or feeling at the mercy of fate.
Well, just a choice to participate even. So there is a faith we can hold that things are working out, that it's all divinely constructed, that we've set this up for ourselves. We can have all those pieces involved, but it's a choice to acknowledge that and to subscribe to that set of conditions. So it's just the recognition of choice, I think, first. But what about you both?
Yeah, I'm feeling like a sense of peace and serenity that even if you don't make a choice, that's okay. You don't have to do anything. Like there's no have to, there's you can just be, and you can just be in that, and not have, any doing or any evolving. It's just it's just a complete sense of almost like an emptiness that's there
Yeah.
at the same time of having all these choices. It's like it's everything all in one.
And I think what you're saying, Avalina, is that choices are not just mental choices, they're a way of being in the world, which have become what we've become what are working deeply enough that they become spontaneous. So we tend to look at the world through tainted perceptions, either as good or as bad, or an event as good and bad, or a person as good or bad, or political situation is good or bad, and then we respond to that. But what if it's not even about anything outside of us? What if it's like, I'm here on this earth, no matter what is going on, I'm choosing to be in balance with it. So it doesn't depend on what emotions I'm experiencing. It doesn't depend on what's going on circumstantially, but it's deeper than that. It's the recognition and the remembrance of who I am. And the human aspect of me then becomes a subset of who I am.
Yeah.
And so, Kiara, where were you on that scale of 1 to 10? I don't know that we got to hear your sovereignty meter.
And more and more in my life, I'm feeling like the human aspect of me is a subset of who I am. And when I can hold that, I'm not saying I always hold that, but more and more. And when I am holding that, I would say that's a 10. When I'm not holding that, I can be anywhere from 0 to 10.
Yeah.
But it's like, what I also find is that I can go off balance, but not for as long as before.
Yeah.
So if I'm knocked off that sovereign scale, I know how to find my way back. More than before.
Yeah.
So it's like that story, of the 5 chapters. Remember? Do you know that one? The Autobiography of 5 chapters.
Why don't you say a little about it for anybody who's not familiar?
This is a good one. Okay, so it's an autobiography in 5 chapters. So the first chapter is when I'm walking down the road and there's a huge hole in the middle of the road. I don't see it. I fall in. And it's like, I'm cursing everybody else. And it's like, who dug that hole and why did they, they did it deliberately because the whole world's against me and they just want me to fall in so they can make fun of me and, all the stories that we create in our heads about why we are victims. So that's chapter 1. That's the starting point. It's like me versus the world, against the world. And then chapter 2, I'm walking down the same road and there's a big hole. I fall in. But this time it's like I recognize that, I'm the klutz that fell in. I don't have to blame anybody else. But then I take out my whip and start beating myself up. It's like, I'm always falling into these holes and I'm just so stupid and so uncoordinated and so unfit for anything. And so it's like that self-flagellation. But it's equal, it's like I'm not blaming anybody else, but I'm doing that to myself. And it's just as bad.
Shame. Yeah.
Shame. And then chapter 3, I'm walking down the same road. I see the hole this time, but it's become a habit. So I fall in. And but by now it's like I know how to climb out. I've been there before. And so it's no big deal. I fall in, I fall out. So I'm learning about neutrality. Chapter 4, I'm walking down the same road, same hole, and this time I walk around it. And so it's like I don't know, it's a level of mastery. Then chapter 5, I take a different road. And now I think to me this is the step where we start becoming creators. We're not, so it's like at this point we have created something, a pattern, we've repatterned ourselves so the universe doesn't need to push us down a hole in order to learn about something and learn about ourselves or other people. We can learn through joy, we can learn through beauty, we can learn through love. We can learn to be part of this divine flow, recognize who we are as that. So we are no longer identified with the limitations of humanity, but we are identified with the potential of humanity. And that can be a thing of beauty and joy. So like you said, Shaunna, we can find ourselves anywhere along this at different times, or simultaneously. In certain aspects of my life, I could be a 1. Certain aspects of my life, I could be a 5. But our journey of sovereignty is about mastery and creativity. It's like, okay, I can choose now. The moment I recognize myself as a 1, I become a 3. The moment I can recognize myself as a 3, I can step out of that hole and become a 4 or a 5. So that's the choices. But sometimes we have to go through the hole long enough to even know that we have a choice.
Yeah.
And that's not easy. And I think most of us at this, I would say that all the challenges that we're experiencing, all the intensity that we're experiencing, all the chaos that we're experiencing in our collective journey right now is to push us out towards 3, 4, and 5.
How about 6, where we all get together and design a new road and build it ourselves? Without holes.
We're learning to be proactive on our journey and learn not through suffering.
Exactly. Yeah. And then there's an evolutionary aspect to this. So it's like, okay, if I'm here on this earth, not knowing why I'm here, but just kind of bumbling along and, trying to make it, trying to fulfill, what you guys would call the American dream.
Well, I don't know about that, but
well, just because you're in that part of the world. But then that's a very small piece of it. If I'm here to serve in a way that is about a new relationship with a human species, new potentials within our genetics, a new evolution that's never been seen, and we identify ourselves as sovereign creators on chapter 6 of our life. Then it's a whole different story.
Yeah, it feels that way. Like we're exceeding the blueprint, so to speak. We're going beyond, and it's just a complete exploration now.
Yeah.
It's all the new frontier. All the new frontier for everyone.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the hardest thing in the world.
Yeah. It's so transition. Unknown. Yeah. It can be overwhelming.
Yeah. So just because I recognize the path on an intellectual level doesn't mean I'm always going to be walk on that path. And then I blame, then again, I'm back in the cycle. Then I blame myself. Oh, I know this path, I can't sustain it. Then I start beating myself up and then blame other people for standing in the way. So a spiritual ego gets in the way.
Yeah.
And that can be more troublesome than anything else.
Yeah, I find that exactly what you're saying, that's actually one of the hardest things to overcome is beating ourselves up and wanting to be further on or along or wanting to, not experience the same pattern anymore. I thought I was done with that.
Right.
And just allowing yourself to be okay with where you're at, just to be like, can we really be okay with where we are on our journey? Because if we can't be okay with it and we can't love ourselves, then it makes it harder for us to move forward. It's you're working against yourself in that way. Yeah,
so
it's a
being
tough one.
okay with where you are is chapter 3.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm in the hole.
Yeah.
The moment I acknowledge that, I'm out of it. Then the universe works with you, supports you, moves through you in chapter 4, 5, and 6. It's like then it's not my responsibility as the separate human being to make something happen through effort, through my effort, identified as a limited human. So then it's like then I'm sovereign. So sovereignty in that definition would mean I'm not identified with my limitations.
Yeah. And that we are interacting as sovereign beings, at least from our perception, is such an interesting piece too. Like here we are sitting, the three of us in this beautiful call, overlapping our sovereignty in these moments. And so those invitations to exploring sovereignty as we appear to interact with one another, even though we're all one, I find so fascinating that we get to observe what different flavors of sovereignty exploration feel like. And in doing so, does that assist us in navigating the holes? If there are holes that we have been relating to, I find that our perception of our collective journey can sometimes give us assistance, whether it's from us appearing to give assistance to others or from the perception of us meeting our own challenges and getting to share them in this way.
Yeah, it feels like they're supporting each other. Exactly what you're saying, like the collective wholes, for using that analogy, they're helping us see our own, and it's like all bubbling up together. Like it's all supporting each other, pointing to the same place.
Well, the two principles of alchemy, as above, so below, as within, so without.
Yeah.
And the personal and the collective, they are mirrors for each other. And for most of my life, or maybe I think this lifetime has been a little bit different. But for many of us, most of our lives have been focused more on the personal, my story, my achievements, my contribution to the world, and even my need to be in service to other people.
Right.
It's always, defined around the personal self. And what happens when you start to move from the personal to the collective? What happens when you start identifying not so much as a personal self, but as a planetary self or universal self?
Yeah. And it feels like that's, what you're saying about the focus on the personal. It's like it's absolutely reflective of the extreme separation that we've gotten to. And so it's almost like, well, it had to be that way because that's where we were. We've become so separate and not knowing of ourselves and not remembering who we really are, that's how it kind of manifests as, oh, we start from the personal and then, let it unfold to the collective. Yeah.
Yeah. And yet we're all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least in this ascension cycle, it seems to be appeared that way.
Okay, so a related concept is immortality.
That's a good one.
What would that mean for you?
Well, I've always felt immortal.
perspectives?
I don't know about you guys, but did you always feel that when I was younger, I just felt like I didn't understand death. Like when I would see even somebody older or somebody aging when I was, really young, I always thought, well, I'm not going to age. Like, well, I don't understand. That doesn't make sense to me.
I know.
It's amazing what we know as a child, like it's just a direct knowing until it's, programmed out of us. But I so resonate with being immortal.
Me too. I agree. I've had that experience too, where it just has never been something my consciousness brings attention to in my personal set of conditions. Not that it hasn't existed, it's just my focus, and what I seem to bring attention to is not in that way. It just isn't feeling resonant. And so it's not that I don't acknowledge it, or that other people are walking that path and that journey. It just has not been something my journey has been looking at closely. It just hasn't felt resonant somehow. And I never understood that. I just always kind of thought, oh, I guess I'm optimistic, but it just doesn't seem to fit. And I'm okay with that, but it's not like I attached to it or thought, oh, I'm just invincible. As a child, I never really felt that it was some kind of ego superiority or anything. It was more like there's just a sensation that this isn't in my world. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
it totally does, especially like the invincible part, because even in the dream state, even when I was younger, like I've always had dreams where, and you guys have probably experienced this too, where you're getting ready to die in the dream, something's happening, you're going to die, and then all of a sudden, like you accept the death, you're like, okay, I'm getting ready to pass, like, oh my gosh, this is it, I'm going to die. And then, the dream sort of morphs and you're like, oh yeah, no, I don't really have to do that. And then it miraculously continues and you never actually die in the dream. It's almost a way of processing death, I suppose. But
how about you, Kiara?
Yeah, when you talk about that dying in the dream, when you recognize that this is also a dream, what we think about as reality is a dream, from a different perspective of being, then even if the body dies, I'm immortal, because I'm not identified with this dream. I'm waking up from this dream into another dream. I'm waking up from the physical body into the astral body or the causal body. And then the cycle continues forever. The self is immortal. And I think if I'm identifying myself as that, and at the same time, also very present in the physical body, then that immortality can transfer into physical immortality as well.
Yeah, I do believe that's very possible and likely to happen to some of us in this lifetime.
That we're releasing limitations around what the typical human physical form is likely to experience as what we perceive as linear time continues. That, perhaps we're undoing patterns that were so embedded in human culture that we have subscribed to them and they've created a certain reality. And so are we just rewriting all of those patterns around aging, around what the physical form is supposed to look like at a certain stage, as to what the cells are supposed to do? We're just hopefully able to see a new way of moving the physical form through these places.
Yeah. And also, as we embody more, as we're bringing in more light into our physical bodies, like what I was referring to about, it feels like time's speeding up. It feels like eventually as we're bringing in more light, we're into the humanness, into our human suits, into on a cellular level, that eventually we just don't experience time. You know, we just don't experience it. So it's like meeting both ways. Like, yes, it's happening on a physical, but we're also just not going to experience it, and time will eventually fall away while we're still in the human suit. And so it's
That's a good,
kind of a
very
perceived
good thought.
immortality in a way also.
Yeah, exactly.
So our sense of time has to do with
density.
Density and dimension that we identify with.
Yeah.
Then how does the physical form release the density through with embodying more of the light? So are we going to end up shifting out of the density of the physical form in losing that? So how will that, it's just, what are we going to end up perceiving about the physical form that way? Perhaps it will just be our light bodies, and then they don't age, right?
Yeah.
So in many traditions, they talk about the rainbow body, taking the rainbow body. In the Egyptian tradition, it was all a series of initiations that people went through. Most of them were about facing fear. And then finally, you were in the Great Pyramid, connecting with the star energies, the galactic energies, bringing them through in a certain way. And when the physical body was prepared for this, then after the 3 days initiation in the sarcophagus, you'd emerge as an immortal. And there's similar initiations in the Tibetan culture, the Mayan, the Aboriginal, many other cultures. The many yogis in the Himalayas have taken the rainbow body. They're well known. Babaji, for instance, and there's invisibly have been hanging out in the world behind the scenes, creating a template for the collective. So that at a certain time, when humanity is ready, we are a transitional species. When we are ready as a species, then that program can be repatterned. It's like that old program can be dissolved, but it takes work. It takes a lot of work. And I don't know how much we are aware of how much work it takes.
Yeah. And it might be best that we don't. Because we might be like, no, I'm not doing that.
We're better
not
off
going
not
down that
being
road.
Aware of that.
Yeah. But it's not a work of achieving anything. It's more a work of unraveling old programs and conditioning.
And just meeting each moment in presence. It's, it's not like we're calling and efforting. That's not what's called for.
Right.
Yeah, because that really works against it. Yeah.
Well, it's so interesting, Kiara, hearing you describe those traditions. A lot of us have known about some of those things, but just bringing those threads in the way you did to this conversation about the current times, to me seems quite, I don't know, it's bringing a different light into it for me a little bit, in light of some of the things that the spiritual community seems to be talking about right now, with what's coming energetically, and what energies the planetary scale is moving through, and with Gaia's transformation, and threads about energetically with solar flares, is that going to affect the transmission communication systems that operate on this planet? And if those things are disrupted, it could be 3 days that we're without power and without those kinds of resources, and wow, it'll be dark then, to bring those kinds of I don't know, stories is the best way. I'm just going to put it out there as that word, but to bring that in alongside what you're saying, that, you know, it would be 3 days in the sarcophagus and it'd be pretty dark in there. And
Right,
just
right,
that there are some mirrors that are
right.
interesting to me.
Yeah. Are you aware of the Inca prophecy? No, I think it's a Mayan prophecy of 3 days of darkness.
I have
Uh-huh.
heard some of that, yeah.
But maybe you
Yeah.
can just summarize it for anybody who
Yeah.
doesn't know.
Yeah. So this, well, I first became aware of this. I think it was 2009. A bunch of us had gone to Guatemala, and when everyone at that point was talking about 2012 and the special
Yeah.
doorway
Yes.
at the end of the Mayan calendar and so on. So part of the reason we were on this journey was to connect with some of the Mayan elders and ask directly about what this means. And so we talked with this one man, Don Alejandro Cirillo.
Oh, I know
And
of him. I know
yeah.
his work. Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. Well, it was fascinating. The first thing he said is forget everything you think you know about the Mayan calendar, because Western interpreters have a very linear interpretation of what this means. And he said, you know, it's not about a date. It's not, because then you're back in linear time. He said, that's not what our prophecies are about. Our prophecy is about 3 days of darkness. And then he started talking about this as a very positive, beautiful, evolutionary point. So nothing to be afraid of, nothing to dread, and nothing to do with 2012 as a linear date. And then as I researched it more later, I realized that this also had to do with the magnetic reversal, or the geomagnetic reversal, more accurately, because all our bodies are linked with the magnetic field of the earth. When I say all our bodies, I mean physical, emotional, mental, causal, as they're linked with each other through the etheric body. And if the magnetic field collapses, then what happens? It's like we repattern, we reorient ourselves. And as I started talking with geologists and scientists, astrophysicists, and those who've been really studying Earth cycles and galactic cycles, what I realized is that the last phase of this magnetic reversal happens very quickly, within a matter of hours or days. So literally, it could be 3 days of darkness. So it's not about power, electrical power going off or your computer is not working. No, it's much more than that. It's about our human identity dissolving. It's our normal sense of who we are being released. Normally, we are in a lot of fear about everything, the fears of change, the fears of death. But when the emotional body is disconnected, there's no fear. When the vital body is disconnected, there's no fear. So at a certain point, the causal body or the soul can download all the way through. If we are surrendered, if you're willing, if you're open. And so at that point, it's possible, to ride this wave into a new creation, a new earth, in ways that we can't even imagine. And that's what the Mayans were referring to. This is the 3 days of darkness. This is what the prophecies have been all about. Same thing with the Aboriginal people, the Inca people, ancient Egyptians, Tibetans, Hindus. And they understood this because they'd gone through this in the past. So what many scientists are now discovering is that this follows a 12,000-year cycle. And now we're right in that window. The last time we went through this was 12,000 years ago. the collapse of Atlantis. And now we have a choice. Again, as we go through this geomagnetic reversal, are we going to go into extinction or rebirth? Are we going to stay in third dimension and fracture? Or are we going to use this powerful force coming through the cosmic energies, the, the cosmic rays that have that are a very high frequency? For most people, we don't even experience it. I mean, we might have unconscious reactions to it, but we don't ride that wave. We don't catch that energy to surf with it. But if we can do that, we can surf our way through into a new creation. So I think that's really what excites me more than anything else. This is what taking the rainbow body is about.
Yes.
And the potential is that it's something, maybe it starts with individuals, but then becomes a collective planetary event.
Because it's all energetic. We're all affecting one another energetically because of our relationship and collectives. That timeline, the calendars are not linear, that it's an energetic set of stages, that it has nothing to do with any linearity. It's just when we reach an energetic place, then it's time for whatever is shifting to shift with those energies.
Yeah, a very individual at first, and the more of us who embark on that journey and have prepared, or because the more you're prepared for it, the easier, the more grace you're going to go through it. But the more of us who are choosing that, it just makes it just opens it up for even more, and so it makes it more indicative for everyone to ride that wave as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
It
How
is so
lucky we
exciting.
are.
I know.
That we're here and we get to experience this, that we're able to sit in community like this and have conversations like this.
Yeah.
So many thousands of generations have not had this opportunity.
No. And to be able to experience the extreme polarities that we have in this lifetime. I mean, my journey, growing up, I mean, I got to experience all of it. Like, I was in the polarities, and then to go from that extreme to here in one lifetime is, it's miraculous. It's like, what a ride. So fortunate.
Maybe that's why some of our brethren are choosing to stay beyond times that would, to some people, make sense to stay. And because the gift is so apparent to be here right now.
Yeah. Well, also, our galactic families are now beginning to interact more directly. They've always been around, but now more directly as we open. And part of the gift to us is the remembrance of who we are. The human family has taken on these beliefs and conditioning about limitation around death. So we've told ourselves that we might make it to 70, 80, 90 years, and then the body dies, or rather we die, because most of us identify with the body. And so if that's in the collective, there's like a collective conditioning or trance that we have programmed ourselves with, then of course we're going to create circumstances and situations in our lives where that becomes real. So we have wars, we have the V word that we don't talk about on YouTube, and other things like that, which basically make us ill, that reduce our lifespans, that plunge us into separation and fear. And so that whole programming takes over. And meanwhile, there's a different program, an evolutionary program, that is dropping in. And this is what's dropping in on the other side of the 3 days of darkness.
Yeah.
And this is where the adventure really begins.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like over the next, 6 linear months, we're going to see a lot of changing. I mean, as to exactly what you're saying, I mean, even like around me, I'm seeing, people experiencing what we're talking about on a much more palpable level. Like I'm witnessing people who have been my neighbors for years, calmest, quietest neighbors, and the other day screaming at the top of their lungs, about their family or whatever. And it's just like it is on. It's happening right now. Yeah.
It certainly is. The energies are very big out there because people are meeting some the recognition of what has been in shadow, and now it's like the flood lamps are on.
You can't hide from it now.
There's ignoring it.
You have to choose. Like it's becoming so apparent. Like you have to go a direction. People are really having their back up against the wall of what they're gonna what they're gonna allow themselves to embody and be with.
But I'll tell you what gives me hope in the midst of all this. So one of my teachers, Sri Aurobindo, talks about the supramental descent. And when he talks about supramental, it's an intelligent force entering in to matter, entering into these dimensions that we inhabit from beyond time and space. And as it enters, it does two things. First of all, it's forcing all the unconscious stuff to the surface, which is what we're experiencing. Secondly, it's a force of unification, which means that even though it's bringing up all this darkness, all this resistance, all this fear, all the energies of war, it's happening in a way that's relatively harmonious. Because it's a force of harmonization. It's not a force of division and duality. It's a force of harmonization that takes duality, transforms it into unity in a way that supports evolution. It's not a cycle of extinction. In previous cycles, as we've gone through these 3 days of darkness or these geomagnetic reversals, we have experienced great extinctions. But because of this supramental force that's coming in, the same cycles are pushing us towards an outcome that's completely different. And this time it would be something that is a rebirth rather than, the same old cycle that we've experienced in the past.
Yeah, I love what you're saying about the unity of it, the unification, and because as you were speaking, it's like, we tend to think, oh, the darkness, we label it as it's bad, it's negative, and we judge it, but really, the darkness is also source. Both light and dark are source. The dark is just source, without remembering who it is, without knowing who it is. It doesn't see itself as light. So it's one and the same. It's just a different perspective. It doesn't know who it is. So it's just allowing that unification through remembering.
And it's more than that. It's more than that. It's actually the womb of creation. So there's an intelligence within the inconscient, as Sri Aurobindo calls it, this darkness that we label as the unknown or the unconscious. But it's not just something that's missing or the opposite of light. It's actually a force of creation that's just unconscious. We haven't inhabited that yet. So as we consciously enter into that womb of creation and enter into that darkness, then we can actually shape evolution through the power of creation coming through. And that's a very different thing. We're not fighting darkness. We're actually entering a womb through which new birth can take place miraculously. It's a very that's what gives me so much hope at this time. This is the like when I was doing that podcast, Age of Pandora. This is the hope at the bottom of Pandora's box. So all the other stuff is flying around the world. All the chaos and all the wars and all the illusions and the hatreds and greed and suffering. And meanwhile, there's this hope sitting in the bottom, and you've closed the box out of horror because you're horrified at what's been released. And now we're opening the box consciously. We're entering into the womb of creation consciously and releasing the hope of the new world.
Well, and like a tuning fork, when we're trying to connect a note to another note, first we have to hear what's discordant before we can work together with the discord to find what's harmonious. It takes that coming into relationship with what isn't seeming in alignment in order to find the new way and the new harmony, the new song.
Like pulling it, like resonating by helping it resonate by pulling it, almost like like grandfather clocks. When you have a room full of grandfather clocks, you add a new one. Eventually, they all start, going together. So it's like allowing it through that resonance, attuning to that. That's a whole.
Well, there's also, some of you may be familiar with Royal Rife, the guy who created this cure for cancer through frequency, and not just cancer, just about anything. And so what he found is that if you find the resonance, the resonant vibration of anything, it could be an emotional state, it could be a disease, and then you manufacture that same resonance through this frequency generator, it cancels it out.
It's a lot like homeopathy, the
exactly.
foundations of homeopathy.
Or shattering a glass with sound.
Right. Right. And that seems to be what's going on in the world right now.
Yeah. Well, when you think about sound, it's all encompassing, right? It's everything. So everything is a color, everything is a sound, everything has a vibration. And it's all just a different viewpoint of the same thing. The sound, the color, it's all one and the same, just a different expression of the same energy. Yeah. In fact, one of the experiences I had when I first had a Kundalini awakening was through sound, was through toning. I was toning with a sequence of 4 specific tones, humming with the breath, and literally within after 15 minutes of humming these tones, it started. And I did this for a month, but it was almost like a key. These specific tones that were given to me. I was in this mysticism group. It just sparked like a huge awakening in me. And the first time I did it, my cells started talking back to me. Like I heard this do all in my head, literally like R2D2. And it went on for about 10 minutes. It's like my body was talking back to me like, we know this. We hear you. But really fascinating experience through sound.
Yeah. I remember we talked about swimming with dolphins. That's what I experienced when I'm in that field. Because they're emitting these very high frequency sounds, clicks and sounds. And when you're in that field, your whole body starts to resonate. And any of the fears or resistances that we're carrying on the surface that we are ready to release is essentially just knocked out. And then it also awakens something blissful and harmonious and powerful as we begin to absorb those frequencies into the cells.
Yeah.
And it's such a joyful experience and such a powerful experience for remembering who we are.
Beautiful.
Mm.
Yeah.
So yes,
The frequency expressions that are available in the human experience have so many different flavors and so many different nuances, and what a gift to be able to be part of so many different kinds of expressions of those frequencies and vibrations to help us remember different elements of what it is to be alive. What a gift. Oh, what a gift.
Yeah, I feel like we're just touching the surface too of the potential there with sound, color, of what that's actually going to do for us. Yeah.
And I'm curious too, Kiara, about how that met you the first time you had that experience. How is the experience different the first time you swam with them versus later? Like, what are the different iterations of the flavors and nuances of that experience as there are repeated moments of it, but in different energetic places of your journey?
Good question. I think the first time that I had the opportunity to swim with them, it started to unravel my sense of unworthiness. And I remember this was on the island of Lanai in Hawaii. And I saw them coming in. I was with a group of people. I saw them coming in. I was so excited. I jumped in, swam way out into the ocean. And meanwhile, they had come around me. They'd come much further close to shore. And my friends were happily swimming with them. And I didn't see them. Finally, it's like I don't see them anywhere. I come back to shore. And my friends are saying, "Wow, isn't that great?" And I said, "What was great?" And I was so bummed out. And then the same afternoon, they came back. And same thing happened again. I swam out. They came in. My friends were just having this great time with them. And this time I did something different. And it's like I decided, okay, dolphins are not, there's so much other stuff happening here. And I started, just enjoying just the act of swimming, being with the turtles, the fish, the coral. And then I came back to shore. And then my friends said, "Wow, that was so special. Did you see that?" And so the dolphins were actually all around me, this jumping over and under. I didn't even see them because I was so absorbed with everything else. So what they're teaching me is they're exact mirrors for my internal state. Wow. So as long as I am attempting to relate to them out of inadequacy or out of the fear of losing something, that's what they mirror back. And so that was the first experience. And then over the days and the weeks that followed, it was a whole different relationship, really developing a deep friendship. They were still mirrors. When I got too attached, when I couldn't relate to being human anymore, because I just wanted to be a dolphin and escape into the ocean with them, then they would stay away. It's like, nope, you go back, find yourself, come back when you're ready to relate to us, not as dolphins, not as humans, but as just presence. So it was a continual, honing of, first releasing of old identities, and then a honing of what is real. So
Sounds
they're
like a
incredible
road.
teachers.
Sounds like a road there with some holes.
Yeah. It also
Yes,
sounds like
yeah.
they wanted you to maintain your sovereignty, right? Like back to what we were saying.
Yes.
It's like, no, you need to stay in your sovereignty, and then we'll come back. Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah.
So beautiful. You've
Gorgeous.
told me a story also once about the whale that you had an encounter with, and that obviously was likely done through sound as well. And it was you'd mentioned it was geared towards the occiput level area. Can you share a little bit more about that and how you feel that was how you received it and where it met you?
Well, yeah, I just have to think about them and I can feel their presence.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what was going on was, well, now I was on the Big Island, and I was spending about 2 months in the plantations near Kealakekua. Every morning I'd jump into the sea, swim with dolphins. There were 3 beaches where they would hang out. If they were not at one of them, they'd likely be somewhere else. So I was, really bonding with these pods of dolphins, just so special. One day they weren't there, but I looked out and I saw the spout. I swam out and there was this mother and baby whale, humpback. And I was so excited. Same thing as before. I raced out. By the time I got there, they were gone. And this time I decided, okay, I'll just, call them in, like I'd learned to do with the dolphins. And so I just floated on the surface, had my eyes closed, went into this state of presence where I was no longer identified with being human. When I opened my eyes, the mother and baby were directly below. So just, like 10 feet below me. And at first I was absolutely panicked. It's like just this enormous creature directly below. And the first thought that came to my mind was, what if she just, flips her tail and I'm just flying out through space? And then I realized, no, she's very much aware of my presence. And slowly it's like I could relax. And I remained floating on the surface, getting more and more relaxed. And at that point, I felt her entering into my consciousness through this occipital region, the blowhole for them. And there was a transmission going on. And so with that transmission, I felt like I just continued to expand. My energetic body, my sense of presence, my aura was just expanding further and further and further and further out. And at a certain point, I felt like there was no sense of human identity. I became the earth. I became Gaia. I, as human, was included within Gaia, so I could maintain that human connection. But that it felt so strange to think of myself as human. I couldn't think of myself as human. And then gradually over time, it's like they taught me this particular mother and baby. It's like I felt this connection that continued. And she was teaching me about Akashic memories, because the ocean is a field of memory. Masaru Emoto's books, it's all about water carrying memory and how you can influence the memory of water through your thoughts, your feelings, your intentions. And so gradually it was like entering into that field of memory, learning how to connect with Gaia as a field of consciousness. And then gradually working with this window. I was also, working with different shamanic traditions. And you open this window, allow other aspects of creation to enter and move through you, speak with you, and communicate. And then what I realized is this It's like the whales are able to do this all the time. They are in touch with the field of Gaia. They can influence Gaia. They can communicate with Gaia. They can respond to any imbalances in the field, and then through their tones, their songs, balance it out. So,
More resonance.
so gradually that became part of how I learned to communicate with Gaia. Eventually, it led to a healing system called Ilahinoor. It kind of, the part of it evolved when I was in Turkey and Egypt, and working with different practices from those traditions, and partly with what the whales were teaching me.
It's so beautiful to hear about your personal moments with these fields of energy, and with the fusing of different levels of our beingness, and just how we can experience the multidimensionality that we are in relation to other beings who really are us anyway. But just to hear your personal experience with that, it's really beautiful.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, anytime there's an interspecies communication is transcending in itself. Even just witnessing it with other animals. It's always opens the heart so much. But I love that, like what you're saying about the water and the memory, and because it's crystalline and it's most of Gaia. I mean, we're basically a water world, so
right.
Yeah.
So
and
much.
Most of our bodies are even water.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Do you know they're have you all seen Frozen 2? It's a Disney movie.
Oh no.
It's a Disney movie, and my daughter told me one time, "Oh, we've got to watch this, Mom. You're really going to like this one." And the whole pretext of the movie is how the sisters Elsa and Anna, right? They are in this sort of Scandinavian Nordic region, which is kind of near the North Pole, but you don't really get a sense for exactly where it is. But the story is about so Elsa has these powers of freezing things, and they don't know why, and so it's the whole movie is about uncovering why she has these powers. And the whole crux of the story is around how the water has memory. And there's a whole beautiful song about it, how the river knows what's happened. The river knows everything, and that's where all the answers lie, and how we find ourselves. It's a beautiful song. It's lovely melody.
Do you remember it?
Yes. We sing it together a lot, but
goes, why don't you sing that?
Where the north wind meets the sea, there's a river full of memory. Sleep, my darling, safe and sound, for in this river all is found. In her waters, deep and true, lie the answer and a path for you. Come, my darling, homeward bound, for when all is lost, then all is found. Anyway, there's more to it, but
it's
beautiful. So beautiful.
It's a beautiful song. I recommend you check out that particular track. It's there's some other lovely, very ascension infused things in this story, including how the elementals weave through this discovery and knowing who you are, that in order to really find who you are, you have to face every part of that elemental, including what might scare you. So there's a whole part about there's a bridge in the song too, that But can you face what you most fear? Can you face what the river knows? So it's this whole thing about in facing your fears, you are then able to embody more of the full strength of these elemental forces and the memory of the water. It's really beautiful.
Wow.
So perfect.
Forgive
So
my
perfect. Yeah.
my spontaneous and not tuned up.
It was lovely. It was so lovely. It was
Well,
beautiful.
I know I'm in the presence of a former professional, so Avalina.
Well, it's interesting. Really? Yeah, I used to be a singer years ago. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you guys need to do that together then.
Duo.
You can join us, Kiara. We'll tune our sound together. I need to warm up.
Yeah, I love what you were saying about.
I need to watch that movie.
Yeah, yeah. Next time we'll all come back and
right. I'll bring the popcorn.
We'll have a chorus. You know what you were saying about the Frozen, like, and it just immediately what dropped in was like, well, look what's happening with global warming, with the ice is melting, awareness, information, it's all being, you know, rippled out into all the waters of Gaia. You know, it's like it's such a perfect representative of what's actually happening.
Well, it is. And
yeah,
all the themes of regaining a perspective on what these elemental forces are really teaching us and what we can learn from them, that it's so much more than what people have taken in as reality for that.
By the way, Shaunna, last time you had mentioned this set of books by Sharon Messenger.
Yes.
So I started reading them.
And what'd you think?
It's just, I can't put it down. I mean, you know, it's like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, or, you know, some of these amazing worlds and species and interconnections between them. And it's beautiful.
Yes. And thank you for the tip of the Nicholas Flamel series.
Yes.
I'm diving into that. So yes, also connected to Harry Potter. And
all those, you just get lost in those. They're just so magical and so fun and really, you know, indicative of who we really are, like what's really possible. Like we see it, we hear it, and we watch it, and we're like, oh, I remember this. Like that little kid comes back out, you know?
Yeah. Well, and this Frozen 2, there's more of that in there about how, you know, we're all remembering abilities we have that have been laying dormant, and we just are unlocking the ability to remember together.
Yeah. Such exciting times.
Yeah.
We're really living the hero's journey, right? You know, the coming of age of ourselves and remembering our hero selves.
Well, we were talking about that at the beginning with immortality, right? And how as we continue to remember the superheroes that we already are, we are connecting to the interdimensionality that we have always been.
Yeah. Isn't it great how, you know, the X-Men and the Avengers series, and you know, I haven't really watched all of it, but it's like, I know it's such a big theme, and kids everywhere are so inspired by that.
Yeah, I grew up with my underoos and the Hall of Justice, and I was Wonder Woman in my underoos, and I was taking leaps off the couch cushions and jumping into them, because that was I knew that was really who I was underneath.
Yeah.
And that
and one of these days you won't land.
Yeah.
you just keep going.
Yeah. We're all practicing right now. Warming up our flying muscles.
Yeah, flying is definitely one of my fortes. I do that quite often at night. I'm ready to do it in the physical, so we shall see.
Yeah.
Well, it is so lovely to be with you all.
So much fun.
What a treat. This is just, I mean, we go on and on for, these beautifully long conversations, and it's just every morsel is delicious. So thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you for this another special time together. and more to come.
Yeah.
More to come.
Always special. Growing and growing and expanding, expanding. Yeah.
More remembering.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you all for being in community today. We are truly blessed.
Yes, we are.
So grateful. Thank you, Kiara, and thank you, Avalina.
Thank you, Shaunna.
Well, thank you, Avalina.
Kiara.
Thank you, Shaunna.
Yeah.
And thank you all who happen to be watching this.
Yeah.
You know, like, why are we here on this planet? Why are we sharing this experience?
Yeah.
Let's make some magic.
Yeah. The magic is here.
It is. So much love to you all.
So much.